Your name and address will always appear in this top corner. Some people choose to have their phone number printed on there. Some people don't. Some people choose to have their driver's license number put on there or whatever. This is kind of what you decide goes on the check.
Other than your name.
Other than your name. This is the check number, and they don't repeat. Usually the first time you get checks, you might start at 500, or they don't usually start at 1. They usually start at a higher number, and it just kind of depends on the bank. And you get boxes of 50 or 100 at a time, depending on how you order them, and they'll go consecutively. So let's say I get 100 checks at a time, and mine started at 500. I would get 500 through 599 in the first box. Once I'd use those 100 checks, when I ordered my next box, it would start at 600, because they have to be consecutive. Because I can't write check 500 2 times. It won't be good. Okay, in this area, you always insert the date. This is the line where you put who the check is paid to. Here's the dollar and change in numbers. This is the dollar and change in words. This 4 line. This is information either for you or the payee. Okay. If you're writing a check with an account number, a lot of times you put the accounts in the 4 line. Or if you're writing a check to, say, your babysitter, you can write for babysitting so that you remember what the check was for, because you get an image of the check from your bank. And then this is the signature line. Okay, actually I should probably write that underneath. Okay, now this number at the bottom here, this is the routing number. This is unique to the bank. So every bank has their own individual routing number. So this number on the check, so every single person that has a bank account from Bank of America or Wells Fargo, they would all have the same number here, because this is the numerical identifier of the bank. This number is your account number. So this is your actual bank account number. And then this number here, this is why I said this is not accurate. This is the check number again. So this should actually be 1936, not 1000.
This is a check off the internet for educational purposes.
Yeah, it's obviously very fake. There's not even a bank name. Additionally, your bank name and address will appear in this area usually. Sometimes just the name, sometimes the name and address, depending on the bank. So if I'm gonna, Bill has 2 L's. So I'm gonna fill out this check to Sprint. And let's say I'm gonna pay it today. So I would put today's date. Okay. I would write Sprint and the pay to the order of. It's $108.76. Actually, it's 108. The and goes where the decimal point is. So the word and in math is for the decimal. So to write this out in words, I would write 108 and then we put the change as a fraction, 76 over 100, and then draw a straight line across to indicate that nothing else should be filled in after that. And then you'd sign it with your signature, and then you would be done with that part. On the 4 line, you could write Sprint bill here or cell phone, but because we're sending this bill to Sprint, and we want to make sure it gets applied to the correct account. Normally, yes, you do send, if you're paying a bill with a check, you send like the little bill slip. But just to make sure it's getting paid to the right account, I recommend doing that. Account number 2637591. That way it's directly on the check. And should something happen and they lose that little slip, they apply it to the correct account. Combination, you could write account number and then you can write cell phone or whatever. You know, so this is for them, this is for you. Here we're going to write a check. We don't have an account number. We're at Publix and we're grocery shopping. So I'm going to put today's date. After I paid the Sprint bill, I went grocery shopping. I spent $76.11. You hyphenate 76. Put the 11 over 100. Make a line across. Sign it. I don't have an account number, so I am done. I don't have to write 4 down here. Unless I want to, I can write groceries. I should probably pay my car payment. So I decided to write out my car payment. Oh, except let me do this real quick. And then I went, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. Do I have to cross this out and get rid of the whole check and void it? I don't. I can cross that out. I can write 21 and I can initial it. As long as I write the words correctly, I can change that number. But you do have to initial it. So now I want to be really careful when I do this. I've got 300, 67, and 21 hundredths. Okay, so if you make a mistake, you can cross it out and correct it. But if I made the mistake here and here, I would need to write a new check. Because the bank might look at that if I crossed them both out and corrected it and say, oh no, that's somebody that she gave the check to did that. I'm going to put it for the account so it gets paid to the right car payment. And then I'm going to sign it. Not Gecko. And I thought, well, you know, I'm paying my car payment. I should probably pay my insurance too. And then I write my account number on it. And then I forget to sign it and I send it in the mail. Can they deposit it? No. If you did not sign your check, it is invalid. They'll have to mail it back to me and I'll have to send them a new one. So don't forget to sign it. Okay, so when you have compounded interest, what happens is the money that you're earning is on that initial deposit plus any interest that you've accumulated. So if, let's say, I deposited $100 and I earned $5 in a month and it was monthly compounding, so at the end of the first month I'd have $105. At the end of the second month, my interest would be based on $105. Not just the 100 that I initially put in, like with simple interest. You have annual compounding, which is once a year. Semi-annual compounding, which is twice a year, every 6 months. Quarterly compounding is 4 times a year or every 3 months. And then daily compounded is 365 days per year, except for leap year when it's 366 times in a year. Now, most banks have set days that they do this. So if my bank's annual compounding date is, say, December 31st, and I open an account on December 12th, they're not going to compound my annual compounding the following December 12th. They're going to do it on December 31st, and then again the following December 31st. So if you open... Yeah, if you open it on an off time, they're not going to change the date that they're going to do their interest. They process it. Now, some of them will, but most banks have like set days for the semi-annually compounding. It's maybe the end of December, end of June, or whatever, however they've set up their dates. Quarterly compounding is every 3 months. There is monthly compounding, which is usually the last day of the month. So the 30th, 31st, or the 28th or 29th, depending on what February we're talking about. So these are the most common, though, is annual, semi-annual, quarterly, and daily, and monthly. So for this example, because we're talking about 1 year and we're talking about annual compounding, we can still use the simple interest formula because it's only once. So we'll say interest is equal to principal times rate times time. So we have $1,000 at 6% times 1 year. So that would be $60. Compounding semi-annually. I'm giving you the compound interest formula, so you're going to have to use the simple interest formula at first. Semi-annually is twice per year, right? So we have the first 6 months, and then we'll have the second 6 months. So the first 6 months, we have $1,000 times her 6% interest times half a year, right? Because we're only doing 6 months. And well, that will give us $30. Makes sense, right? Half a year, $30. But now for the second 6 months, we're not doing 1,000. We're doing that 1,000 plus that 30. So at the end of 6 months, she has 1,030 in her account. So for the second 6 months, that's our new principal. So when we multiply all that together, we're actually going to get $30.90. So the second 6 months, instead of just earning another $30, she's actually earning almost $31 because that 30 that got added in initially. So her balance would be $10.30 plus $30.90. So at the end of the year, she would have made $60.90. Whereas if it had been simple interest, she would have only made $60. So she earned almost an extra whole dollar. Okay, at 3 months, 3 months is a fourth of a year. So a fourth of a year is 0.25 years. Good luck. So we have 1,000 times her interest rate times a quarter of a year. Well, that initial one is $15. So her balance at the end of 3 months would be $1,015. Then if you kept going for the full year, you'd base the next quarter of a year on $1,015. We'd earn a little bit more than $15, and then the next one a little bit higher, a little bit higher. So it actually builds up. How much does it earn in 1 day? 1 day is 1 over 365 of a year. So my principal is still 1,000. My rate is still 0.06, but my time in years is 1 over 365 because we're talking 1 day, and there's 365 days in a year. So I'm going to take, here's how, if you don't have a scientific calculator, here's how you would want to enter that to not lose all your decimal places through the rounding. I'm going to do the fraction first. Multiply that times 0.06. Multiply that times 1,000. $0.16. So she'd earned 16 cents the first day. The second day she would probably earn, like 16.25 cents. Again, that's another reason they accumulate it to the end of the month, because they can't pay you 1/4 cent. No such thing. We don't have half pennies anymore. They used to. They don't. It's the reason I don't give you big, long deposit problems with simple interest. Okay, so we have a bank account that compounds daily at a rate of 3.2%. So our rate is going to be 0.032. Okay, we're going to start with July 11th. She has a balance of $1,234.98. She withdraws $200 and adds 34. So, because she deposits 34. So she's got $1,064.90 at the end of the day, and that's what her interest is going to be based on. 98. Thank you.
No, the 34 and 34 doesn't make sense.
8. There.
Yeah.
Times 0.032 times 1 over 365. And again, I'm going to do that part first. Times 0.032 times 1068.98. She'll earn 9 cents. So at the end of the day, she'll have earned 9 cents. So on the 12th, she will start with that, in theory.
1069.
7.
Yeah, sorry, 107.
Okay, and then she deposits $345.77. Not 7. I don't know why I'm even doing this. I have it in front of me. Yeah, it's all here. It's all done. Okay, so it's at the end of the day on July 12th, she has $1414.84. So we calculate her new interest off of that number. Again, I do the fraction first, multiply backwards basically, and that will earn her 12 cents. So then her balance at the end of the 12th would be $1414.84 plus 12 cents. So $1414.96.
%0 APR. $1 down.
Okay, so the compound interest formula accounts for compound interest and gives you an ending balance, not interest earned. The simple interest formula gives you interest earned. The compound interest formula gives you a balance at the end. It doesn't account, though, for any deposits or withdrawals. So this is, I put money in this account and then I left it alone. This is how much money I'd have. Annual percentage rate is the rate used to calculate. So if it's 2% interest, it's the 2% that's getting multiplied in. The annual percentage yield is the actual percent of interest earned. And this is generally a higher than the APR. And so banks advertise this. Now, banks advertise annual percentage yield when they want you to come put your money in their account because the annual percentage yield is higher. When they are talking about wanting to loan you money, they advertise the annual percentage rate because that's actually lower than what you're really paying. Do you see? So you have to be careful. Truth in advertising doesn't necessarily really mean you're getting what you paid for, kind of thing, you know. So the APY is higher than the APR. Compound interest formula. This is your balance at the end. The P is still the principal. A 1 is just a 1. R is the rate. N, you've got 2 of them. These are the number of times compounded.
T is time.
in a year. And T is time in years. It always has to be in years.
Which is why you have fractions when it stays in.
Mhm.